second, so give me 40 seconds to grab your seat.
Are you
Finish your conversation.
Genealogy Society?
My wife is,
Oh, okay.
I have been over there, but
Yeah,
she's really into it.
I used to be. I designed the website that they use
Oh.
and did the newsletter for about 10 years.
Where's my man John Kerry?
Finally got all
You
the
did bring your pair, boy.
genealogy I could find. I'm not a member anymore.
Sure.
We are recording. Yes, we are recording. You can read it up there, Richard. Richard, you can read it right up on the screen. Okay.
I'm not doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, you're putting in where you.
All right. I can call the order of the meeting. Please stand. All right, would you please do the invocation?
Almighty God, we ask your blessing on this chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. As our purpose is to promise sound learning and true patriotism, and to further all that is good in our community. So we pray that you will strengthen our hands in all that we undertake, that we may serve our nation to your honor and glory. Amen. Amen.
Everybody put your phones on silent. Oh my God. All right.
We'll do as you say, not as you do.
Yeah, well. All right. John Kerry, would you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you forget which button to push?
Huh?
Did you forget which button to push?
No.
Let me open this window for you.
Yeah.
Got your light on yet?
Wow, I don't care. I know it's funny. Even I laughed, but wasn't. Okay. John, would you care to lead us in the American Creed?
American Creed. I believe in the United States of America
as
as
a
a
government
government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers and derived from the command of the government, democracy and a republic, the sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrifice their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it's my duty to my country, love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Okay, you may be seated. And I'd like to introduce our guest, and we have a very special guest. We have the Regional Vice President of our area here today. And could you please stand, Mr. David Thomas? And David is going to do he's going to do the swearing in of the officers that are here today. And one thing we got to celebrate, we have a birthday, Stephen Brown, January 17th, 1947, and he'll be 75 years old, 75 years young. Nice work, Vicki. Well, it looks like we're gonna have to buy a new HDMI cable. All right, well, oh God, why is it raining? Okay, I'd like to say a prayer for all the members and families who are sick, that were in need of prayer. And, I want to remind everybody, once you have in a couple of minutes, we lost Harry. Yeah, Harley Nelson, this week. Let them be filled with patience and joy in your presence as they wait for your healing touch. Please restore your servant to full health. Dear Father, remove all fear and doubt from his heart by the power of your Holy Spirit, and may you, Lord, be glorified through his life. Amen. Amen. So if you could have Regional Vice President step forward and all the newly elected officers that are here today. And the first order of business will be to take the oath of office. I am. That's the microphone over there.
Okay.
You don't have to go over there, they'll pick you up.
Okay.
That way.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, smile.
Okay, great pleasure in presenting to you the newly elected officers of the Withlacoochee chapter. Florida Society, Sons of the American Revolution. May all members and guests please rise. Officers, staff names to state your name. I, on behalf of the officers and members of the Withlacoochee chapter, Sons of the American Revolution, Florida Society, do hereby promise and declare that at all times I will support the Constitution of the United States of America. I further promise and declare that I will, by present an example, enforce obedience to the Constitution and bylaws of the national and state societies of the Sons of the American Revolution, and foster a sense of individual obligation to the community, state, and nation. So help me God, and keep me in steadfast to this, my obligation and pledge to the Sons of the American Revolution. As an installing officer, it is my duty to charge the members of the Withlacoochee chapter with your privileges, duties, and responsibilities. You are now privileged to take an active part in all meetings, aid in making policies, and bring forth objectives that benefit not only your organization, but also the state and nation. Additionally, you are obligated to volunteer to assume leadership positions of the chapter's committees necessary to carry out the numerous activities of the chapter. You are also obligated to preserve the records and perpetuate the memory of those ancestors who fought for independence and to keep alive and develop the spirit that prompted that great sacrifice, to enact lessons of patriotism and love of country in the communities in which we live, to inspire respect for the stars and stripes of the people of the world, and promote peace and goodwill in the hearts and minds of the people of these United States and all other nations. It is now my privilege to present to you as your president and his, you can.
Second Vice President.
Richard Bailey as treasurer.
Tom Bowen, secretary.
Your new elected officers. Thank you, Steve. Oh, you're welcome. Sit down, we're done.
Got it? Secretary.
You know, I have it.
And most of you know that we lost Harley Nelson, and he was our very last World War II veteran that was in this chapter. And I thought it would be appropriate, and I checked with Carla, and she thought it would be appropriate if we just have a slight, a small
Remembrance.
Yeah, remembrance of Harley, because he was a longtime member of our chapter, and right up until the parade, the Veterans Day parade, actually Vicky, drove him in a car, so he was very active in our chapter, and he will be his service will start off at Wilder Funeral Home in Homestand. The date is yet to be determined. Okay, so but we will let you all know. As our chapter has purchased a flag box with the engraving like we did for Dan Hans. It gives his date of service, and he was a bronze star recipient, and he's going to be missed. And what I'd like to do now is just open it up to any of the older guys or younger guys who would like to say something about Harley. Anybody? Yes.
Harley always had a good word for you and a smile. He will be missed, that's for sure. He was quite active when I first started into this chapter, and unfortunately his health kept him away from us during the last part. So he will be missed, though. I was glad to see him the last time he was here. I guess that was last month, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So
Yeah, it was
Good to
Carla was
be
working.
able to speak to him at least one last time.
That's good. This picture was actually taken, and if you guys remember when we did the honoring of John Camello's wife, now this picture came from that collage that we were running. And she asked me to find a good picture, and I think that was the best because it had the uniform, the American flag. I mean, it just said who the man is, to be perfectly honest with you. His daughter was very, very, very happy to get that picture. And what's not showing here is when I cropped it was Richard Sumner, Jack Townsend, and John Camillo. So, unfortunately, I guess, we're gonna miss them, that's for sure. So what we're gonna do is I'm going up in uniform and I'm asking as many people who can, when the date is announced. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Several years ago, I went to the book sale at the Homosassa Library. And when I come out, there was a little table set up with all these brochures on it. Harley Nelson was behind the table. He asked me then, he said, would this interest you? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, did you have an ancestor who served in the Revolutionary War? And I said, yes, I did. Well, here's an application for her chapter. And I signed it and turned it in. And that's how I become a member here.
I'd just like to say a couple of words about Holly. For those that didn't know, actually was a former chapter president here. And he was a neighbor of mine. And I had an opportunity to play golf with Holly occasionally. Neither of us did very well, but we did play golf. And a fine gentleman, lost his wife several years ago, and has been living with his daughter ever since. Incidentally, her address is Golf View, not Gulf View.
I did a copy and paste some.
Okay, it's like Gulf View, you know?
Yeah, but whoever sent it to me,
Oh, okay.
okay, I did a copy and paste. I have a tendency to make those mistakes. Evidently, other people do.
Oh, he was a good man.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, what I was saying earlier, and I don't know if I completed it, but we're going to have we have a flag box being made with the inscription on the bottom. You know his name and his date of service, and that he was a Bronze Star medal holder in World War II. All right, well, thank you. And what I'd like you to do now is, David, I'd like to give you an opportunity to come up and address as the regional vice president. I'm gonna shut this down.
I've got a couple of things. Well, the state has some things going on right now. I don't know if y'all are aware of the 250th anniversary of the revolution. They're doing these buttons here. I've seen somebody with one here. I don't know who it was now. But you've seen them or not?
Yeah,
These things are.
no, what I got is not that.
Yeah, you got that board of management.
I did, and we've, Richard also just ordered some from,
Yeah.
I don't know the guy's name, Richard, would know, so he ordered.
Up in Connecticut.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got 40 coming in.
Yeah, we just did 50. We're doing it as you pay your dues, you get a pin.
Yep.
And worked out real well that way. They also have a flag that you guys can get. It gives you points. It's a 250th anniversary flag. And some of the, they have these 3 medals that are coming out too for it. One is for 15 points, and then it goes to 30 points, 60, and 120. And you get the points as a chapter, and you can do it as an individual. Some of the things you can do is just attend, like Thomas Creek, the last naval battle. If you do it in costume, you get 5 points just being there. You get 3 points. And you accumulate these points, you can send them in, and you get a medal from the state, I guess it is, or you can order it. I'm starting a thing in Gainesville. I'm also the president of the Gainesville chapter. And we're going to start marking all of our compatriot grave sites that have been before us from the chapter. And that'll be even an event that you can do. Plus, not only that, by doing that, there's also a different set of medals that you can get that's for grave marking. There's a compatriot grave marking medal, patriot grave marking medal, and a locating of patriot graves. So there's a lot of things like that you can use for double dipping. I was trying to make it the whole region. I don't know if you guys all know who's all in your region, but it's Lake City, Gainesville, the Villages, Ocala, Withlacoochee, and oh man, I got the sixth one. It's right here though too. No, that's the Villages. Yeah, David Bassoni did that. Took off from I can't think of it. That's where Scott Bushnell and them are out of. Lake something. That's what,
Lake City.
Yeah.
yeah, well, Lake City too, and then I said that one. Well, maybe I said Lake Sumter first. Yeah, anyhow, there's 6 of them. And when I got like 3 of them so far that we have approval from the family to go ahead and mark their graves. I figured it might be hard to get 15, 20 different markers, but if we all participated as a region, it's not that far away to go to an event on a Saturday afternoon or something. I'm an hour and a half to 2 hours from here. A lot of zigzagging roads to get me here, but the event could take an hour, hour and a half. I was talking to David Bissoni about it the other day, and he thought that was an excellent idea, that maybe we could even get the color guard involved in it. Well, that's a good thought. Then now, if you're part of the color guard, that's another set of medals you get points for. So there's a lot of activities that could be going on with that. Other than that, statewide, the Board of Management meeting's coming up in May. Other than that, that's about the only thing I know that's going on. 250. Oh, the Congress 2023 is coming up. They're looking for 80 participants. Yeah, there it is right there. Yep. 80 participants to help with that. It's going to cost the state society. The last Board of Management meeting, they had upped it to like $70,000 to host this event. And they're looking for 80 people to help it go on while it's going on. I don't know what 80 people. They're looking for help.
Where's that gonna be?
Orlando. Was Orlando from here about an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice and convenient. And I'm on one of these boards for it, but they haven't said nothing about it yet. I guess one guy's trying to handle it all himself, but we'll see. Anybody got any questions? Maybe I can help with something. I'm here to help.
There used to be a thing where I used to work, the Department of Transportation. I'm Tallahassee, and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
They may be looking for somebody to help with transportation. We're gonna have buses to take people to Canaveral and all kinds of places. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a question. You said you had 3 grave sites for Revolutionary War.
no, compatriot. The difference between patriot and compatriot. We are compatriots.
Right.
So like this gentleman you just had, Harley, that just passed away. Get his daughter, I guess that's the only one surviving family. She'd have to sign off on it if he's getting buried.
Oh, I thought you were talking about our ancestors finding their graves.
No, well, that's a whole separate. That's a separate one too. If you know where your ancestor's grave is and it's not marked, you can get points for that too, for finding them. Me and my wife know where there's 5 between her family and mine. And I hate to say this, but we haven't told anybody where they're at. We have coordinates for them. The reason for that is we want to be part of the ceremony. We get, we're talking about Kentucky, Ohio, and North Carolina. So if anything's going to go on for them, we want to be part of it. It's the only reason that we haven't told anybody. And we can probably name some more. We was at a bed and breakfast one time in Kentucky, and just so happened there was one there in the backyard. Yep, didn't even know. And the lady goes, "Yeah, right there." What? That was when I first joined into the Sons of American Revolution about 10 years ago. But yeah, compatriot grave sites. That right here in your own community, you probably have 5 or 6 out of this chapter. I don't know how long the chapter's been, but it should be a fairly simple deal. And then everybody can get points out of it. And if let the rest of us know, we shoot down here, we all get points. We let you guys know, regardless of what else is going on around the state, we can all participate together.
What's the name of the Patriot Market look like?
Oh, there's like 2 or 3 different kinds. They range in price. Right now, they have one for the 250th They're probably about 6, they range anywhere from 3 inches to 6 inches. And they got a new one out right now for this 250th. I don't know why they came out with that, but whatever. They're $15. Then you got 35 for some. Then they go up as high as 100, 110. Now, I was looking at the ones that were $35. Oh yeah, there you go. There's one right here.
Of course, our chapter is on the ball.
So you've done this already.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
As a matter of fact, when we give the.
I want one of these.
Well, 95.
We're just getting started in this.
Well, the bottom line is, to get one out of here, what you gotta do is dive, because this goes with the flag box.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So which one was this?
It's the $15 one. It's lighter.
Okay.
It's lighter, okay?
That's fine.
And it's good for the grade boxes. You know what I mean? The one that's $35 is pretty heavy and it's, the grade boxes wouldn't last.
Yeah,
But it's the same thing.
yeah, all say the same thing. I think they're all brass.
Yeah.
So, well, right now, the one that 250th is $15. And what I did was I started another thing.
I'll make a deal with you. I forgot to write a certificate of appreciation, so if you accept that as a gift.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
fine. I've got, I already.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I just lost my train of thought now. Oh, we started a fund up. That's what it is. I presented it to the executive committee, and this is when I went through David Sony too about it. And this is, I thought it was an excellent idea, that we started a fund up, that if you donate to the fund, $50, whatever, we're gonna take your name down, and that's for the grave marking. So we don't have to actually, we'll start a whole fund up just for grave markings of our compatriots from our chapter. And as we find them, we'll go out and mark them, we'll take the money from the fund, and whoever donates to it, your name will be on the list of donations, and you will get one when you pass. Although now becomes the idea, okay, I came up with the idea, so now I'm still coming up with, I'm going, well, first of all, we're gonna have to have family permission to put them on it. Then we're gonna have a release from the family or for the compatriots, if they're donating, that we won't have to go through that with the thing, that they allow us to put it on their headstone or put one on their urn, whatever it is. And if there's any other special wishes. But I wanted to get that going, and that's something that Gainesville's trying to kick around. Maybe you guys can too. I'd be open for any kind of ideas on it. And it just guarantees whoever puts the money in, as long as you're in good standing, you're going to be recognized as a compatriot. As a matter of fact, it goes back to this 250th. I started reading on it the other day. There's a couple rules to use that one, that you gotta, when you do the dedication of it, you bring in the compatriot of, you bring in the patriot of the compatriot, that, so everybody knows that that's who this was. Hope I didn't confuse anybody. Yes, sir.
Just another suggestion. We did this for my ancestor in Alabama about 4 years ago, but it was a joint thing with the SAR and the DAR.
Yep.
Together. And I just suggested if we do that for the compatriots, we might want to do that. You wanted to do more local events with the DAR.
Yep.
It would be a good opportunity to do that for the compatriots when we do that. If,
Yeah, the DAR is very big where I'm at too. That's Nancy Briles, is the regent right now. My wife's a DAR member. And yes, we would involve everybody. Another thing I got going on right now, well, it can be for the whole region. I don't really care. It's about getting new members. I went by Harley Davidson, Four Horse Harley Davidson the other day after I left Ocala chapter, and we're going to do a flag dedication for them. And they're making a big deal out of it. The only anybody in here rides a Harley or ever did, I do. And when I mentioned it to them, they took off with it.
You know, that's a great idea. We got an open house that really didn't draw that many people. There was only 6 or 7 people who came in, but we got, the dean there got 3. And we got, one person who is, it looks like they're going to get reinstated and one more new member.
Yep.
It's,
Yeah.
so it's worthwhile doing.
Yeah, I just stopped and I thought it'd be like a 5 or 10 people maybe activity. Well, they're planning a barbecue around it, having a big, I had no idea it was gonna get to that. But if it does, one of the things is we're gonna set a table up, and like somebody else was saying here, you hand out the brochures and with the motorcycle people that come around there and some of the veteran groups that we have, I would imagine there'll be a whole lot of them that might want to do that.
You go to Reach Across America in Bushnell and you're gonna find a whole bunch of motorcycles.
Well, Gainesville the same way. Yeah, you got I don't know what that pack that does that. They come in when that truck comes riding in.
Yeah.
They're escorted by probably 100. All them veterans groups, VFW, all of them have motorcycle things. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for this.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for one, actually 2 reports, the treasurer's report. Can we do the treasurer's report?
Morning, everyone. All right, bank summary. Our income for last month was $2,653. We did our expenses out, which our major expense was to pay for everybody's state and national dues. Our expenses out was $3,891. So we're minus $1,238 in the account for this month. I did bring up the itemized since everybody asked about it last time. Our income for the veterans programs is we have for the last year, we brought in $516 for our veterans program. And so we supplemented that with $700 to pay for the Christmas presents and what we did for the veterans in December. So that came out to an overall expense of $1,249. So, and that was approved through the EVM for the expense to cover the veterans programs. I have the total amount of the bank balances. So if anybody wants to know that, you can come up and ask. And I'll give it to Tom for posting in the minutes. Any questions on the bank treasury?
You know, one thing that we did at the EVM meeting is we had a meeting where we set a budget, if you will. Okay, so anytime that we get the Reach Across America, the flag boxes for the, we put a number in there, I think it's like $450. And hopefully we don't reach that, but if we do, we just go back, we'll just have to come back and try to get more money. But all our expenses that we know about, the prizes for the poster contest, the essay contest, all that money has been set aside. It is a substantial balance that's left that will be available if you're just, talk to Richard so that if we bring something up, we don't have to worry if there's funding available. And go ahead.
Make a motion to accept treasurer's report.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, one other thing that we did was we floated during the EVM is the possibility of starting to use credit cards for paying meals, dues, anything else within the chapter.
I was gonna bring that up after.
You want to bring that up later? Okay,
Yeah, as far as like for new business, because,
okay.
11:15, we want to get into our guest speaker.
Okay.
And our guest speaker is the secretary, and the secretary has just left. He's not here for a report. Do you have a report?
No report.
Okay. All right. So, well, I hate to get into that conversation because it could last more than 5 or 10 minutes, Okay, Vicki, do you have anything?
Hello. I don't have a number for membership because I know with the dues paying, we're always in sort of a state of flux, so I didn't even ask this time. The good news is we do have 3 new members. Just approved were John Seddon, Christopher Faust, and James Mullins. We have 4 applications still under review at National, and 1 additional completed for signature, with an additional 1 that should be completed for signature. That transfer, I still don't know.
I don't know either. He's Tim Miller, the potential transfer.
No, that I'm not.
Okay, then I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay. We sent 1 transfer out to his chapter, and I don't believe we've heard back from that. The new applications currently are processing through the 27th of September. So we still got a couple of weeks. I'm hoping that maybe these ones that have been up there for forever will know by next month. But they did, even with the vacation, all of a sudden things started moving again. So, and hopefully next month, we'll have an actual number.
Thank you. All right. My voice okay? I have to keep checking my voice because I'm soft spoken, and that microphone will take care of almost everybody in the room but me. So hopefully next year you'll have a new president and we won't have to surrender. Okay. Okay, right now, I guess we can go with our guest speaker, Mr. Tom Bowen, and he's going to go with phase 2 of his presentation. He started in November.
President Dave, fellow members of the SAR, and guests. Dave called on me to do a speech. I accepted, not knowing the amount of time I put into it. I ended up reading all or parts of 9 books, many online sources such as Monticello.org, watching several documentaries, the Oprah Winfrey Show, as well as a complete movie done on this subject. I'll occasionally veer off the subject matter slightly, but only because it was well connected to Jefferson himself.
He was an innovative man, talented and accomplished in many areas, not just government. And we'll start it off with a trivia question. What two founders died on the same day? What day was that? Well, you read the book already, Stephen.
John Adams.
Thank you, Vicki. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And they were both determined to make it to that day. They were both on their deathbed. In fact, John Adams said, I don't know how he knew this, but he said, and Jefferson still lives on July 4th. Thomas Jefferson woke up just before midnight and asked what date was it. He was told it was the 3rd. So he fell back asleep, died the next day. But both those men were just determined to last until the 50th anniversary. And just refresh your memory a bit. Just a little bit intro on from the last speech. Things went smoothly for TJ and Sally, and I will call him TJ because it's just short, except for a man named James Callender. He was a newspaper man who had left Scotland to avoid an arrest for treason. He was a muckraking newsman and considered to be a despicable character and looked for salacious items to print on public men. He had been arrested and convicted of sedition. He distanced himself when Jefferson at first trusted him and fed him items confidentially, but after he was arrested and convicted for sedition, he distanced himself. After he served a year in jail and his fine was paid by Jefferson and Jefferson pardoned him, he regained employment as a newspaper man. He had heard rumors of Jefferson's liaison with Sally Hemings and made inquiries after his release. He also demanded an appointment to postmaster of Richmond, as he believed that this would be a reward for his journalistic services in support of Jefferson's election to the presidency. Jefferson turned him down for the postmaster job. This man was also adamantly opposed to miscegenation, the sexual mixing of blacks and whites, a word actually not invented till the 1860s. He published an article in his newspaper stating on September 1, 1802, in the Richmond Recorder, quote, "It is well known the man whom hath delighted the people to honor keeps and for many years has kept as his concubine one of his slaves. Her name is Sally. The name of her eldest son is Tom. His features are said to bear a striking though sable resemblance to those of the president himself." Unquote. He continued to publish additional information until he was found drowned in 3 feet of water in 1803. James Aiken, a political cartoonist, published one of the most famous political drawings in the last several hundred years, and that's the drawing that you have delivered to your table. And it was a drawing of a male chicken with Jefferson's head and a smaller female chicken with Sally's darker head staring adoringly at Jefferson with a typical wrapped headdress that slaves wore. The drawing was titled "A Philosophic Cock." And just underneath that, to the right of that K, obviously a double entendre there. There's some tiny little writing that you can't see, but what the writing says is, quote, "'Tis not a set of features or complexion or tincture of skin that I admire." There is one detail of Callender's accusation has historians still in discussion. Callender implied that Tom was Tom Jefferson's son, and in fact, a Tom Woodson did exist. And supposedly after the scandal broke, it was sent to live with the Woodson family. Therefore, that's why I get the name of Woodson. A Woodson descendant, Brian Woodson Sr., wrote and had published a book titled "A President in the Family," in which it makes the claim that Tom Woodson was the Jefferson's first child that in fact survived and did not die. The only problem is the DNA testing done around 20 years ago accepts the fact that all the descendants of Sally Hemings are in fact descendants of a male Jefferson, but not Tom Woodson. She lived at one of the two rooms described as servants' quarters in the south wing of Monticello, according to Monticello.org, the outfit that runs Monticello. The organization, as well as another Jefferson historical organization, has accepted the reality that all of Sally Hemings' children has Thomas Jefferson as their father. Sally Hemings' former quarters have been excavated, and a display featuring Sally Hemings, and there is a display featuring Sally Hemings at Monticello. Jefferson had multiple entrances to his personal quarters, both outside and inside Monticello. This would have been an acceptable situation in the Jefferson Monticello household, as Martha, Patsy Jefferson Randolph, moved in with her 12 children and her husband, Thomas Randolph, after her father left the presidency. Patsy did not have a happy marriage and even commented after her 9th child, she expressed the hope that this would be her last. There was no birth control in these days, and divorce was almost unheard of, especially for prominent families. The eldest son, Thomas Jefferson Randolph, the eldest son of Patsy, described his father as, quote, more ferocious than the wolf and more fell than a hyena. Bacon, Jefferson's overseer, recalled an incident when the senior Randolph caned his adult son publicly. At some point in his life, Jeff Randolph repudiated this accusation and attempted to rehabilitate his father, as his father apologized on his deathbed. Jefferson's long-term relationship with Sally Hemings would also been very acceptable to Patsy Jefferson Randolph, as she would have been the undisputed mistress of the household. This was an important position for women of this era in the household of America's most famous founder and president. She would have lost this position if Jefferson would have remarried, as any new wife would immediately assume that position. Sally Hemings and her children were still slaves until freed by Jefferson, were absolutely no threat to Patsy Randolph, and were a guarantee that even though her marriage was unhappy, she could have fulfillment as a mistress of Monticello. Jefferson freed Beverly, his male son, and Harriet in 1822, just after Harriet's, 21st birthday. He set them free by giving them luggage, a horse and carriage, and $50, which would be about $1,200 in today's money, and allowing them to leave Monticello. He noted in his farm book, now this is not his actual farm book, but this is a depiction of everything that he wrote in there in detail. He noted in his farm book that they had, quote, run away. He put out no alert on them. Remember, they were 7/8 white and only 1/8 black. So essentially, they were white and would have easily passed for white since they were dressed well and were literate. It was hypothesized by many historians that they would have married white and kept their history a secret. Their descendants are unknown today, and they were lost to history. His 2 other surviving children were freed in his will when he died. 3 of the remaining Hemings, inherited from Wales, were freed by Jefferson, also informally or by giving them what was called their time. This was an informal system that slave owners would unofficially free long-standing and loyal slaves. They would essentially go into retirement at the plantation they worked for and be cared for into old age. After Jefferson's death, Madison, Easton, and their mother, Madison Hemings, Easton Hemings, and their mother Sally, moved to Charlottesville, purchased a lot, and built a house. They both married local free women of color. Sometime in the late 1830s, after their mother's death in 1835, they both moved to Ohio. Easton Hemings eventually moved to Wisconsin in mid-century and passed into the white world. Another Hemings descendant lost to history. Madison Hemings lived in Pike County, Ohio, and at the age of 68 gave a famous, well-documented interview to a reporter for the Pike County Republican, published on March 13th, 1873. Madison was named Madison after a request from Jane Madison's wife when Sally Hemings was pregnant with Madison. He gives a detailed description of his life at Monticello and a very favorable insight of his father, Thomas Jefferson. He describes TJ's temperament as, quote, smooth and even, and that he was uniformly kind to all about him. He advised that TJ spent most of his time in his office reading, writing, and engaged in correspondence. He advised TJ was, quote, hale and hearty, and walked erect at 83 with a stately tread. He tells the story of his marriage to Mary McCoy and her family. Her grandmother was a slave and lived with her master, Stephen Hughes, as his wife. She was manumitted by him, which made all of her children free. This is another example of a number of white men that had black women as significant others, as we call it today, and produced children with them. This was especially common when older white men became widowers in this era and were considered too old to marry again. Typically, these men were not high status men, as high status men were always marriageable, even into their 50s, 60s, and 70s. You see that today with actors and high status political figures with much younger wives. Now that we know the story of Jefferson's two families, let's closely examine the controversy then and now. When Callender broke the story in his newspaper, other papers picked up the story, especially Federalist newspapers, which were his opponents. Remember that Jefferson served as the third president of the United States from 1801 to 1809, and the expose published by Callender was published in September 1802, early in TJ's presidency, first presidency. Callender was relentless in his attacks, and anytime he picked up another tidbit, thought to be from TJ's neighbors, he would publish again. Callender stated he would be willing to meet the president in a court of justice with a dozen witnesses, quote, as to the black wench and her mulatto litter, unquote. The Fredericktown Herald was shocked that, quote, such a man should have lived in the habitual violation of the seventh commandment with one of his own slaves. That's commandment having to do with adultery, so obviously they forgot that his wife had died 20 years ago. The Virginia Gazette scolded Jefferson on November 3, 1802, that his daughters, quote, had the mortification to see illegitimate mulatto sisters and brothers enjoying the same privileges of parental affection with themselves. And, quote, why have you not married some worthy woman of your own complexion? The fact was, Jefferson never showed any affection to his children by Sally, and he knew that this would be a problem. These affairs were generally ignored by Southerners if fathers kept quiet about them and did not indicate in any way these children were his offspring. There were ballads written about this affair, one of them appearing in the Philadelphia Portfolio of October 2nd, 1802, that truly displays the vitriolic nature of the situation. If I can do it justice, it was to the tune of Yankee Doodle. So, of all the damsels on the green, on mountain or in a valley, a lass so luscious ne'er were seen as Monticelli and Sally. Yankee Doodle, who's the noodle, but wife perhaps so handy, to breed a flock of slaves for stock, a blackamoor's the dandy. Search every town and city through, search market, street, and alley. No dame at dusk shall meet your view, so yielding as my Sally. When pressed by loads of state affairs, I seek to sport and dally. The sweetest solace of my cares is in the lap of Sally. Let Yankee parsons preach their worst. Let Tory witlings rally. You men of morals and be cursed, but snap like sharks for Sally. She's black, you tell me, grant that she be. Must color always tally. Black is love's proper hue for me, and white's the hue for Sally. But though she by the gland's secrets must I stand, shall I? Tucked up between a Paris sheets, there's no perfume like Sally. You call her slave, and pray we're slaves, made only for the galley. Try for yourselves, you witless knaves. Take each to bed your Sally. Yankee Doodle, who's the noodle? Wine vapid told me brandy, for still I find to breed my kind, a Negro wench the dandy. Wow, can you imagine that?
In the newspaper.
In the newspaper. On the President of the United States. Boston and Philadelphia newspapers depicted TJ's daughters as, quote, weeping to see a negress installed in place of their mother. There were numerous ballads, poems, and other materials appearing in various newspapers and pamphlets on TJ and Sally. There was some defense of Jefferson by other newspapers, such as the New York Evening Post, who attacked Callender as, quote, a reptile, treacherous, and deceitful. So how did Jefferson deal with these public attacks? He dealt with them as modern politicians deal with accusations. He never in his lifetime confirmed or denied these attacks. He simply didn't talk about it. This is also an area that reporters did not publicly question public figures. There was also an era that many folks were illiterate and newspapers had very small circulations. Not content with attacking Jefferson, Callender began to throw brickbats at other former benefactors, notably George Hay, who had been his defense attorney at his sedition trial. He accused Hay, who was a son-in-law of James Monroe, of withholding evidence in a local court case. Hay armed himself with a cudgel, followed Callender into a store in Richmond, and beat him about the head and shoulders, leaving him with serious injuries, with Callender claiming, quote, I lost 4 pounds of blood. This was a form of caning where a person doing the caning was the aggrieved party. There was a famous example of this caning when in 1856, Southern Congressman Brooks caned Northern Senator Sumner for a 2-day speech he gave on regarding slavery in Kansas. It was a big issue there. He was caned during a session of Senate and almost died as a result of this caning. It was also a less lethal way to maintain your honor instead of challenging somebody to a duel. Beating up editors was commonplace at this time, and the practice was rarely penalized. Hay was giving a vote of thanks by 15 members of the Virginia legislature for beating Callender. Callender denounced Hayes in his newspaper as an assassin and murderer. Hay, in turn, took Callender to court, and the judge ordered both parties to pay $500 as security. Do not attack each other. Callender refused to pay and was sent to jail, where he continued to write articles for his newspaper. The attacks on Jefferson mostly ceased when the prime generator of these attacks was found drowned in the 3 foot of water on July 17, 1803. Probably good riddance. He was known to be a heavy drinker.
Suicide.
It's probably questionable whether it was helped along, whether he did it himself, whether he was so drunk he fell in the water and just drowned or what, but they just never did figure it out. And nobody investigated it because they didn't care. The scurrilous campaign by Callender had no effect on the presidential election, and TJ was elected by a landslide in 1804. The Electoral College elected him by a vote of 162 to 14 for his second term. The controversy continued for the next 200 years, but at a relatively low level. Jefferson's legal white family continually denied the Jefferson-Hemmings relationship throughout the 1800s and 1900s. The modern day controversy started when Fawn Brody's 594-page book was published in 1974. It was called Thomas Jefferson, An Intimate History. Fawn Brody was a well-known historian and was first tenured female professor at UCLA. She lived from 1915 to 1981, and prior to writing the Jefferson biography, she had written 3 previous biographies on Sir Richard Burton, Thaddeus Stevens, and Joseph Smith, the Mormon prophet. She herself was born a Mormon. Her maternal grandfather was president of the Brigham Young University. I'm going to give you a full biography, as she was a remarkable, brilliant historian and was the first author to really connect Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. Her 1974 book on Jefferson was a best-selling book and was the first modern examination of evidence that Jefferson had an extensive, intimate relationship with Sally Hemings and had fathered children with her. Her book was extensively researched and had over 1,500 footnotes. Her index was 23 pages of small type. Fawn Brody was a precocious child. She memorized and recited lengthy poems at age 3. Her mother, who was homeschooling her older sister, and Fawn listened in. So at age 6, she advanced to the 4th grade. At 14, when she graduated from high school, she was a salutatorian. She was teaching English at her college at age 19. After she received her master's at the University of Chicago, she privately lost her faith in Mormonism. She published a book on Joseph Smith called No Man Knows My History, which was a very unflattering book on Smith. She was excommunicated from the Mormon Church. She published 2 other biographies, one on Sir Richard Burton, a noted historian, British explorer and soldier, which was a critical success. She became a full professor of history at UCLA, and as one of her courses she taught was the U.S. from 1800 to 1830, Jefferson was a natural subject for her. She understood that she could not compete with Dumas Malone, who was completing a 6-volume work on Jefferson, so she decided to concentrate on the private man. Malone had relied on the Jefferson family history, oral history, that 2 Randolph grandchildren had named the Carr, Thomas Jefferson's nephews. They were always called the Carr nephews, C-A-R-R, as the father of Hemings' children. Malone and another Jefferson biographer, Merrill Peterson, discounted the oral history of the Hemings descendants. She used Malone's extensive documentation of Jefferson's stays at Monticello to prove that Jefferson was that Hemings, Sally Hemings, never conceived children when Jefferson was not at Monticello. This is during the time that Jefferson was away from his beloved home for months at a time. He actually came home for months when he was president just because he missed his home. Prior to publishing in 1971, she presented a summary of her arguments to the Organization of American Historians, which is the largest professional society dedicated to the teaching and study of American history. She also published an article in the American Heritage magazine, a magazine dedicated to publishing American history, called, quote, The Great Jefferson Taboo, about her conclusion that Jefferson-Hemings relationship existed. In a change from the magazine's usual practices, they published all of her footnotes to show her sources and conclusions. They are essentially peer reviews which are exposing your work to other experts. When she finally published in '74, her book on Jefferson was the spring selection of the Book of the Month Club. She was interviewed on the Today Show, and the book was an immediate commercial success. It was on a New York Times bestseller list for 13 weeks and sold a total of 350,000 copies, netting her royalties of 350,000, adjusting for inflation around $1 million in today's money. In 1997, Annette Gordon Reed, an African-American female, graduate of Harvard, an attorney and professor of law and history at New York Lake Law School and Rutgers University, published a book entitled Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings in American Controversy, which further cemented the Jefferson-Hemings relationship. She noted the bias of the Jefferson historians in accepting the oral histories of the Jefferson family while ignoring the oral histories of the Hemings family. She also noted that the Malone data that Jefferson was at Monticello during the conception period for each of Sally's children. Annette Gordon Reed published another book in '08, quote, The Hemingses of Monticello, which at 802 pages is the longest book published on this issue. She won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize in History for this work. She had over 1,150 extensive footnotes, which took up 67 pages, and another 61 pages of bibliography and index, all in very small type. And other works are read on the subject. Fawn Brodie and Annette Gordon Reed were the most extensively quoted authors. To attempt to resolve this controversy in November 1998, 14 DNA tests were conducted with male descendants of Jefferson, as well as additional testing of descendants of Jefferson's male neighbors. Testing was done with descendants of Thomas Woodson, the alleged first child of Jefferson, with Sally. There was a DNA match with the Easton Hemings descendant, Like to see, I'm neglecting the. Oh, well,
May not reach it. Just get ready to reach it.
there we go. That's Patsy Jefferson Randolph right there. Jefferson's only daughter that survived. All of his children died, and his second youngest daughter died of breast cancer in her early 30s. So that this gal right here, and she was like, for a woman, she was like 5'10" or 5'11". Jefferson was estimated to be about 6'2". There's Monticello. These are a depiction of the quarters that Sally Hemings would have lived in. These are, there is no known drawings of Sally Hemings, so people have just kind of guessed what she looked like. There was only 2 oral descriptions, that she was very good looking with long black hair, and mighty near white. This is actually some of the Easton Hemings descendants right here. That's the father to the left and the 3 sons. There's there is no known picture of Easton, but the elderly gentleman on the left is his son Beverly, keeping the name in the family. Okay, Dr. Foster, who conducted the test, concluded that any one of 8 Jeffersons, either Thomas, his brother Randolph, or his 5 sons, and a cousin George, could have been the father of Hemings' children. The historical evidence going back to who was in residence at the time of Sally's conceptions indicate Thomas Jefferson as the father. He was always in residence during the time that Sally would have conceived. The other 7 Jeffersons were not. Remember that the historical evidence is substantial, as historians have access to 19,000 letters that Jefferson wrote to his friends and associates, in which he made a copy of every letter he wrote. How do you make these copies? There's no Xerox machine back there, no carbon paper.
He invented a machine to do it.
Somebody else did.
I think Jefferson did it. It's in Monticello.
Two Englishmen, Hawkins and Peel, invented a machine called a patent polygraph number 57. Not the machine is today that detects whether you're telling the truth or not. This was a complicated machine that had 2 separate pens connected by a system of levers, springs, and joints. The user used one to write on a piece of paper, and the other pen, which was immediately next to the writer, would exactly duplicate the handwriting on a separate sheet of paper. When you dipped your pen into your inkwell, the other pen would duplicate your motion and dip into the other ink pen in the other inkwell. So if you're writing, let's just say this is Thomas Jefferson's hand, just go T, J, J, E, F, F, E, R, S, O, N. The other pen, connected by this complicated system of levers and wood, kind of small pieces of wood, would duplicate his exact handwriting. So that way, there's no question today that it was Thomas Jefferson writing these. It took years to perfect this device, and as the inventors improved it, Jefferson would buy the new one, and owning eventually 12 of these machines during his time. He first started using them in 1806. In January 2000, a 9-member research commission commissioned by the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, which operates Monticello, concluded in part with several points. That one, that Dr. Foster's DNA study was conducted in a manner that meets the standards of the scientific community, and its scientific results are valid. That there was, quote, high probability that Thomas Jefferson fathered Easton Hemings, and he most likely was the father of all 6 Hemings children appearing in the Monticello records. Jefferson's famous farm book, and we're going to talk a moment about his farm book. was an extensive written documentation too much stuff here. Extensive written documentation of everything he did on his plantation. Slaves born and died, all the vegetables planted when they sprouted, a complete inventory of domestic animals. I mean, a complete inventory. All the pigs, cows, horses, chickens were all counted. What date flowers bloom, fruit trees planted, the weather, fish planted in his ponds. He had carp. He actually planted carp in his ponds. Rations and bedding issued to individual slaves, etc., etc. In 1781, he had an extensive documentation of his material losses to the British down to the farm animals, barrels of corn, bushels of wheat, and his slave losses where they fled to the British, joined, died, or returned. And this is in 1781. He has 8 slaves, fled to the enemy and died. There's another 5 slaves, joined enemy and died. And there was a couple of them joined enemy, returned and died. Several more joined enemy. Another 5 caught smallpox from enemy and died. And some more down at the bottom, and this is all of his 3 plantations, caught the camp fever from Negroes who returned and died. So, I mean, it's just extensive documentation of everything you could possibly imagine. So back to the story. There are 2 more minor points having to do with Thomas Woodson, and that further research should be explored on Hemmings and Jefferson. Since 2018, exhibits and tour commentary have been revised to reflect Jefferson's paternity of all of Hemmings' children, with a display of Sally Hemings shown as a shadow, as there's no portrait or drawing of her. Most academics have agreed with this consensus. There is a competing organization that carries a lot of weight. The Monticello Association, founded in 1913. This organization owns and operates the graveyard on Monticello grounds. If you are a lineal descendant of Thomas Jefferson, you can be buried in this graveyard. Dues are only $40 a year. After the DNA study was made public, a member of this association, Lucian Truscott, met with Gordon Reed and some of the Hemmings on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Invited them to the annual meeting of the Monticello Association. The president of the association did not allow a vote regarding allowing the Hemmings families to be honorary members of the association. They did vote to allow additional studies on the question. In the fall of 2001, the National Genealogical Society Quarterly reported that the weight of historical evidence and the DNA study were sufficient to conclude that Jefferson had a long relationship with Hemmings and fathered all of her children. The National Genealogical Society was founded in 1903 and is the gold standard of genealogical research. The newly formed Thomas Jefferson Heritage Society in 2000 got the job from the Monticello Association. This is the competing association, to examine if in fact Thomas Jefferson fathered Sally Hemings' children. This society was formed specifically to dispute the growing historical census that Jefferson fathered Hemings' children. This society accuses the Monticello Foundation of bowing to political correctness and opposed to Hemings' displays at Monticello. They commissioned a scholars commission to investigate the Jefferson Hemings connection, and this commission decided there was no connection between Hemings and Jefferson. The battle goes on 200 years later. A past president of the Monticello Association, John Works Jr., and a current member of the Heritage Society, stated in a written memo on 5/3/2002, quote, "Those who want to bulldoze a kinship where none was likely to exist are the real liars, frauds, and hypocrites." Kind of a calendar 200 years later. He later sent a letter of apology on April 3, 2003 to Truscott, although Works called Truscott misguided in his letter. Prescott responded in 2 weeks with his own bristly 2-page letter to Works chastising him for the Monticello's Association to exclude the Hemmings from their annual meeting by a new rule limiting the amount of guests at the annual dinner, meaning Hemmings family members, and to hold these guests at the door until vouched for by the actual member. It was clearly an attempt to reduce the number of Hemmings attending. Works was also chastised by Truscott for banning all guests on Sunday from the graveyard, another new rule. Works responded with his own 3-page letter in a week complaining that Hemmings in the last year's meetings had claimed to the press outside the meeting that the Scholars Commission was funded by the Klan and that the meeting had been secretly tape recorded. He further implied that this behavior damaged any future attempts to admit the Hemmings family to the association. This was answered by a short letter from Truscott saying essentially that Works and his friends had taken over the organization and they were going to, quote, do whatever they want to do from here on out. The controversy continues today, but at very low ebb and without the vitriolic debate which I enumerated above. Researching the web, I found an interview done by CBS News on February 14th, 2019, President's Day, in which the correspondent is interviewing Lucian Truscott, the white Jefferson's 6th great-grandson, in the company of a Hemmings cousin, Shannon Lanier, another 6th great-grandson of Jefferson. It was a well-done interview at Monticello and showed many views of Monticello as well as a picture of them standing in front of Jefferson Monument in the cemetery. Lucian is still a prime defender of the right of the Hemmings families to be granted burial rights in Jefferson Cemetery, but the Monticello Association, who owns the cemetery, has not budged on this issue. When Jefferson died in 1826, he unfortunately left a huge debt of $107,000, which would be the equivalent of roughly $2 million in today's dollars. He loved good food and the best French wines. His wine bill during the time he was president was equivalent to $150,000 in today's dollars. His grandson, A. Randolph, was forced to sell Monticello all the furnishings and all of his slaves except 7 from the Hemmings family, which were freed in his will. Sally was not freed, but was, quote, given her time by Patsy Jefferson and lived out her life till 1835 in Charlottesville with 2 of her adult children. The interesting part of Jefferson, who was the original writer of the Declaration of Independence, was a lengthy paragraph in the original draft, which Jefferson, who was actually opposed to slavery, said in part when referring to the King of England, quote, he has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the person of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere to incur a miserable death in their transportation thither, unquote. He goes on to say more about the abomination of slavery, but this passage was too controversial for the other founders, many of them slaveholders, so it was stricken from the completed version of our declaration. He was one of our greatest founders and presidents, but also a very complicated man. In all the literature I've read in researching this speech, he is always treated with the greatest respect by his biographers. In the end result, he was a man who needed the companionship of a woman after his wife died and fortunately found one at his beloved Monticello. That's it, folks. So if any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to ask.
I had a question. Wasn't it typical of slave owners in the 1800s before the Civil War to procreate with slaves?
Yes, that was fairly common in the South. I kind of covered it on my first speech several months ago, but slave owners and their sons pretty much had open season on the female slaves and the plantation. And as long as nobody took any notice of the children that resulted from that, it was just kind of politely ignored. So yes, the answer is yes. Stephen?
When you were talking about that polygraph thing, you said that you started using it in 1806.
Yes.
How did they duplicate all of those letters prior to that, which would be about 50 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think he did. I think that he only started to duplicate it when he got a hold of the polygraph machine. Because otherwise you'd have to literally rewrite, the entire letter yourself, and that'd be very tedious considering you're dipping your pen into the inkwell and going back on the paper and so forth. So I think that 19,000 letters is from 1806 till several weeks before he died.
So they saved a lot of the actual letters that he wrote to different individuals.
Every letter he wrote since 1806 was saved.
Okay,
There's 19,000 letters.
right. Prior to that, we don't really have that many.
We don't.
I think the Declaration of Independence that Jefferson is a primary creator of.
Yep.
Was duplicated at least 13 times so that the declaration could be sent to each colony or each state.
Okay.
I don't know who did it, but
I'm sure they had scribes even, the Egyptian pharaohs had scribes.
yeah, right.
Anything else, folks? I'll turn the meeting back over to President Dave.
If it's just one letter, okay, but
Have to check in the volume, Coach. Well, thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate it. And I left my introduction with your hat. I left my introduction with your hat.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, we got them both. Well, that brings us right up to lunchtime. So with that, we're going to break for lunch, and thank you very much, Tom. That was very interesting, controversial, talk. It was very good, very good. Thank you. We get the meeting started in about 30 seconds, so if you want to put your choice away and get ready.
Stretch.
Excuse me, Mr. President. Something just got brought to my attention.
Is this your joint?
Huh?
Veterans here?
Yes. Okay.
That's non-land.
Okay, but David, is there a way you can email me this in a PDF or
Sure.
in a Word document? And what I'll do is I'll send it out to the membership.
Yeah, anybody that wants one now?
Yeah. And David, why don't you just get up here and explain that?
Yeah, hurry up.
Yeah, come on. Now we're back in session and the regional vice president has more wisdom to share with us. And in the meantime, I forgot somebody's birthday, and that's Mr. Weiler, and his birthday is January 14th. 17 what?
You were close, 77.
January 11th.
We have two more. Anybody in the chapter here that was in the military especially, I guess it's it doesn't matter, military. Let me see one of them applications. I gave them all out. I'll give it back. There's a thing here, the Veterans Battalion. It's a membership application, doesn't cost you a thing. You were in the military, all you got to do, fill it out, your name, rank, DD 214, instructions are right here. You can get in. I'm not sure how you get your medal for doing that. That's a done given. Don't have to participate in nothing. You already did. You did your service. Thank you for your service. And I had some in my possession. I gave them all out. I guess I was gonna get one to Dave. I got one more if somebody wants it.
But, David, if you could, if you put it in a word.
I will send it.
And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send it out to every member.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, you can. And all they gotta do is get it back to you.
Yeah,
And, if you, Don Landman, if you don't have Don's,
yeah, I do.
send it to him.
We're good.
Yeah, and then he'll get you in. And then I'm not sure how it works, but if you go back into that, I've just shown somebody else medals under merchandise from the National. There's actually medals for that.
We don't have to go back on active duty, do we?
No. Unless you want to, I can.
No,
look that
no.
up.
It's okay.
What you do is you gotta do active duty with the Sons of the American Revolution. I mean, you gotta have an office.
Now this is through the state,
No, it's through the National,
through national.
but you're becoming part of
The
the
state
state.
has a,
Yeah.
battalion also.
Yep.
Because I know
I wasn't,
when I was president, I signed up several people into it.
did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been around long, but it's been around for a little bit.
There's a Korean right there.
See, they have different campaign medals
Right.
too.
Right, yeah.
This is just a veterans. It doesn't
But this is
necessarily
national,
mean,
not state, because the state has that as well.
this is through the state of Florida, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is Florida Society. And I'm not eligible for it, so I didn't really, but I always offer it if I come around. I have there's so many different things you guys could be getting into and I'm not even sure what they all are.
And he's my leader, so don't expect much more from me.
Everything I found out, I had to find out on my own. This is what we do when David and we go down to the Board of Management. I know I've seen him there. I'm not sure if anybody else has been there. I've been there going on 10 years. And just because you go, don't mean that every time you go, you pick something up. Because sometimes you miss it. But this is something that I picked up along the way somewhere. And I've gotten almost anybody in my chapter too. I try to give it out because there's very little paperwork. It's an easy to do thing, boom, and you're in it. And then whatever you get to signify it, you're gonna have to look it up.
David taught me a great lesson at the Board of Management. He says, you need to come up to the hospitality room. And that's where you actually, you make some great relationships and you learn a lot.
I swear by the hospitality room. That is, the Board of Management is just a stuffy old meeting like any other, unless it's the awards meeting, then it's kind of fun. But other than that, hospitality room is where the stories begin.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes. And relationships are formed, they're really good ones.
Yep.
You know?
Sure is. I encourage, again, you know what? Thomas Creek's coming up too. I'll send you that flyer too.
Okay.
This is a stretch for any of y'all to go to. Thomas Creek is one of 3 battles that were fought here in Florida. Actually, it's probably the only one on land. Thomas Creek is right up there by Callahan, which is above Jacksonville. It's roughly an hour and a quarter from my house. So it'd probably be like 3 hours from here. But it's about an hour or 2 thing. Look it up. I mean, George Washington wanted Florida so bad. 3 campaigns to get here and take it and never won. Never did get it. And then you got Merritt Island, which was the last naval battle. You got Pensacola, which was, I think it was another naval campaign or something. I've never been to that one because it's a stretch. Some of these are a stretch for us all to go to. But just like I said, we can develop things to get us points just by, like I said, commemorating one of our compatriots. That's get points for that. Go to Merritt Island to the last naval battle. Callahan or Thomas Creek. Those are ways that we can do it without having to go 9 hours someplace. You know, it's like, these guys got it made down here. You're only an hour from Ocala to the meetings. Me and my wife to go, we got to get a motel. That's expensive. Any of it's expensive. Oh, another thing, if anybody's interested, next July, coming July, is going to be the 132nd Congress. That's in Savannah. That'd probably be a good time. Georgia's putting that one on. And it'd be a good thing to go to if you wanted to, just to see what happens. I've never been to one. Me and my wife are probably going to go. We're going to probably hate it later, but we'll go and figure it out. Sorry, I didn't bring it up before. You keep me going, I'll stand up here all day.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. And David's going to send that to me, and I'm going to send it out to everyone. So everyone that can apply will apply or can, or just have the opportunity. Okay, so now we're going to continue with our meeting, and we'd like to get Mr. Russ Gibson to give his report. And if you just come over in this general area, we can, from here, then Mike will pick you up.
I have no report. Are there any questions?
Why not?
You've been too busy. I can tell you about two things that I signed up for and canceled out of. Back in November, I got a call from the school department, Citrus County, about doing this welcome back program, which I've done 2 other times. And I said, sure, no problem. Until this Omicron variant started up in Florida. And then I'm thinking, they want me to do just a presentation of colors at 3 meetings over 2 days. And I was going to have Jack Townsend with me. And I'm thinking, Jack and me together are 150 years old. And everybody in these meetings are going to be 40 and under, maybe vaccinated. And I'm thinking, Jack, we're not going to do this. Jack says, thank you very much. End of my report.
What about Reach Across America? Did you have it? Oh, it's not called like. I can talk about that.
Can you?
What, sir? If you pass it along, take it over. You know, we did, John, Kerry, Russ, myself, Jim Eklund. You know, we were there well, Russ and John and myself in uniform, and we were at Reach Across America, and I was lucky enough to put out my relatives that are up there, and then, you know, share a little bit and spreading the response. So we did that. Actually, I think we got a little medal for that too.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and because Jim coordinated that for us. We got with the local DAR with it at their meeting point. Oh, here we go.
This medal right here.
That's the medal. Okay, the poster contest. Okay, well, Larry's not here, and he probably won't be, and Chris, you're going to be his assistant, so you can keep us posted up in the future on that.
What I know about the poster contest is it's the Battle of Pensacola. That's what I know about the poster contest.
Well, that's that's more than it's on the Florida website. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. The junior to Sea Scouts of the ROTC program, you anything on that, Ralph?
No, all I have is what I gave you this morning about the Civil Air Patrol.
Okay, thank you. And a poster contest, Charlie Day, who was he and Norm Fryer or co-chairman on a committee, and we all know that Charlie lost his wife, and he's moving back home with his family up in Connecticut, so he'll be here periodically, but not in the same position as he was before. And from what I understand, Charlie gave you the paperwork that, what's the name of the family, Norm?
I'm drawing a blank,
Oh, God.
but it's not the poster contest, it's the.
No, it's the essay contest, you're right.
Rumble, isn't it?
Rumbaugh?
No,
No.
no.
No, it's the same family that's won it, the last 3 or 4 years anyway. They won first circuit. and took the prize again.
Shepherd.
Shepherd, yeah, Mrs. Shepherd. Wonderful, wonderful. Which I did.
3 shepherds this year.
Hmm?
There's 3 shepherds submitted this year.
There are 3 shepherds that have submitted this year.
Yes,
How many sheep did they have?
yeah, all 3. This is Eagle Scouts, look up the webpage, Mr. Bailey.
Still in progress. The one that we have is up to date, working with Scott on this one and a couple other chapters.
All right, and Bill Peter's not here for the veterans, and the only thing that we did was on the 18th of December, we went down and we gave the presents to from the chapter to the veterans home in Lutz, and they were very appreciative. And we were fortunate enough that Walmart gave 10 of these 10-inch screen DVD players, so that the residents that can't get out of bed can see movies, and it's really pretty nice. We wound up giving, I think, 8 extra electric razors, as backup, and for other veterans in the facility that are in need. Okay, now we want to get to new business, and I'm going to give the floor to Richard right now, because it has to do with the lunch program.
Okay, what I was referring to earlier, we talked during the EVM, was putting forth the idea of starting to use credit cards, getting a credit card readers, or creating a database to where we call you up on the phone and you acknowledge that you want to pay for your meal, and I could just put it through on a credit card. We wanted to find out if the general pop of our meeting is going to be okay with that, because I know some people have privacy issues on that, and we can go either way. We're just offering that up as a solution to help pay for it, so we're not having to go through some of the checkout stuff at the very beginning. So it's an idea of, however, I have found out that the cost for a swipe is 0 when you sign on to the company. A chip reader type is $50. The actual transactions, if we do a database and we just go by basing our transactions off a database, is 3.5% plus 15 cents per transaction. So that amounts to, say, for a $23 meal, it would be a extra $1 added to the transaction. So that would be approximately $12 a year per meal. Well, actually, we have 3 months we take off, so it'd be less than that. But we could also use this for dues, also to make it easier to get dues instead of just having somebody acknowledge, say, yes, charge my dues. That way we don't have to worry about receiving all the checks all the time and keep pushing everybody. So It's an idea that we're floating, and just wanted to get any ideas from everyone here, whether they think that it is a worthwhile idea to pursue or not.
One thing, Richard, before John, is one of the reasons this is being brought up is because we have, like, I think there's like three or four people who ordered meals and did not show up. Okay, in our chapter bylaws, we have, there's an item where you're still responsible, but then it's uncollectible. I don't know. I think there's one or two that people that will say, hey, I couldn't make it, here's the money. But usually it's very difficult to collect the money, so the chapter winds up eating it. And that's really what it brought up. We got, how many today?
We got three. So I was gonna bring that up because we got three chicken wraps here.
Yeah,
So
she
when you
had
guys, when anybody wants a chicken wrap, go ahead and pick it up when on your way out.
But there's actually four because you had one that wasn't scheduled that took a meal, right?
Yes,
Okay, so that
but that was cut, so that was covered.
yeah, but that was covered. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is,
Yeah.
there's four people that didn't show. Okay, five people didn't show.
Yeah,
Why?
we covered two.
Why can't you recover the money from these honorable compatriots?
Because you know what? To be honest with you, when you go to, for the money, they get really,
They do.
off your ears. Tighter. They get pissed off at you.
Why?
I don't know, Chauncey. If I had that
Yeah,
answer, I'd have it.
Chauncey, we've made the statement that cutoff is Wednesday night.
Right.
If you make a change after Wednesday night, because I can't change anything after Wednesday night with Citrus Hills.
Yeah.
Anything that comes in after Wednesday night,
Right.
you're responsible for.
Right.
We've told that many times in the meetings. So if you don't show up at a meeting, then you're responsible for your meal.
But we've even sent
I
letters
keep
out.
the tags here, so when they show up or anything like that, I'll bring it up to them when they show up.
Yeah.
And I've got 5 tags right now that I've got for people who need to pay for meals that they've missed in the last 3 meetings.
You don't have to tell me that I owe money.
No. So, and I don't have, and there's also others that do the same thing. I mean, I'll come in here and they'll pay for their missed meals with no problem. But then you got other people like Dave says, will put up an argument, which I had one last month. And they put up an argument and said, and I'm not gonna fight with them. If they're gonna argue, then I said, that's it. I'm not gonna push.
Right, I don't blame you, but they know the rules.
Yes.
They're honorable, they'll pay their bill.
Right. Yep.
Well, let's get rid of it.
I
agree.
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
Is the cash option still open?
Yes.
You don't want to use
I'm not gonna change anything that we're already doing right now. It's just that we're going to option with the credit card to make it easier if anybody wants to. So it'd be like cash, check, or credit card.
I mean, on the other hand, I did miss one meeting by accident, but I did pay for my meal. What I wouldn't understand is any member of the organization should understand this, and there shouldn't be a problem with collecting it, right?
Well, we agree with you,
We
John.
agree with
Just
you,
wish
talking
it
to the choir.
Yeah,
There's a couple of
you know,
states
we
that do
totally
this
agree with
already.
that.
And I don't know what they are right offhand, but you could probably borrow off of their, how they're doing it.
Yeah, well, I researched it through, and the best one that I could find so far is Square. And like I said, they have the lowest percentage. The percentages are lower for actual swipes or chips. But if we're gonna do a database thing and somebody just tells me over the phone, it's okay. And I charge it, it's gonna cost us 3.5% plus 15 cents.
Hey, I got a question for you. I mean, and I guess this is the time for it. Could we just get a hold on the credit card if they don't show up and then just charge them?
Well, the whole purpose is when we make our calls,
Yeah,
we would make our calls and they would order their meals. then I would go to the database and charge each one of the credit cards if, after being told we're okay to do it, and just charge each one of the credit cards at that time.
Okay. That's fine.
And so if they don't show up, they don't show up, but they're already been charged.
Okay.
Right. Good idea.
Yeah, something we should have been doing already.
Yep.
That's a shame that all of a
Yeah, 'cause
sudden increased our years by $1.
It wasn't happening so bad a few months ago. We maybe had 1 or 2 no-shows, but in the last couple of months, we've had 4 to 5 people no-shows.
$100 a month.
That's $100 a shot.
And well, I haven't actually, there's a couple of them that haven't even showed up yet. So.
Why don't we post the names up on the wall?
The wall of shame.
Let's put them on the spot.
So that's what I'm pointing out to everyone. If you have any other questions or.
But now, how are you keeping line on it, as far as paid or didn't pay? For example, I came in late today.
Right.
And so I paid for mine when I came in,
Mhm.
but I got Bob's.
Yep.
So are you
I'll
counting
change
this?
it. I'll change yours and cover yours.
All right,
But
because I've never missed one. Then I just want to make sure that my name's not on that list.
We can call that the S list.
yeah.
Today I'm Bob. And I'm going,
All right, so I guess, is there any more discussion? Because, I'll entertain a, a
Motion.
So we get a feeling of how the chapter is.
Do we want to word this motion as more investigation? Or do we want to go and word the motion as move forward with it and start?
Let's move forward and start.
I second the motion.
Oh, hang on, we got a question.
Is the additional cost going to be put on the meal at the time of sale? In other words, is a $23 meal then going to be charged on the credit card as $24?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd have to be, yeah. Yes.
No, because the percentage changes.
Richard, I can't hear him, and the
Oh.
answer.
What his statement was is, are we going to go add the extra $1 to the meal charge to cover the credit card charge?
Absolutely.
Sure, whatever it is,
That's what he said, yes.
Yeah.
Higher amount, it's up to 3.5%.
Well, we've already figured out that on a $23 meal, it's 97 cents for the meal. Huh? And so that's what I said, is we would add that 97 cents to the meal charge. So just like any commercial operation would. Yes. Yeah, all commercial operations do the same thing. They charge their prices to cover the percentage of their transactions. No. Yeah, it's gonna be like the gas stations, cash or credit.
David,
Hey,
less than half of our membership is here now. Shouldn't this go out to the full membership?
no, not necessarily.
Just a
It's
question.
just way, I think the way the bylaws are set up, it's whoever is sitting in the general meeting at the time, we bring it up.
Well, the bottom line is, we're not,
Besides that, this is optional.
Exactly. It's not committing anybody.
the bottom line is, even if we go with it or we don't, it's not a bylaw change. The bylaw
No.
change is what you're talking about. We're not doing a bylaw change. We're doing an in-house procedure change, which the people that it affects are sitting in the room here. The people who don't pay, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them at all.
Yeah, we're paying, we as a group are paying for the meals.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Yep. Yep.
We got that too, folks.
Why aren't people showing up?
So.
Illness, brother.
About what?
Pandemic.
There was a motion and a second, so let's vote.
Yeah.
There was a motion and a second.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
We're doing some.
Okay.
So now,
Now, and the question is now what are you gonna say is, we're gonna database your credit card number and information so we can charge at your statement. Nobody has a problem with doing that, with me doing that.
Nope.
Well, if they got a problem, then they
Yeah.
better come and show up with a check, right?
Yep, and I'll have the readers, so I mean, when we do the meals, I'll just have the readers, we can do it at that time too. All right,
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, now.
Am I okay?
Yep.
One of the other things I wanted to do is starting off the new year is, Stephen is registrar with Vicky, and I want to appoint Nelson Peters and Tom Hellman as assistant registrars. And Vicky has been kind enough to say that she is going to help train so that we won't be left away. Vicky was left when she was just handed a box and said, here you go, you're on your own.
That's the truth too.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
And we want to get it so that, we got at least 2 people in the chapter who can process and do it successfully. So, so that's one of the appointments. Then Tom Hellman is also going to be the assistant secretary because, Tom Bowen won't be here for the May meeting, I believe. So he'll be able to take over. And what I'd like to do is get a volunteer to be assistant treasurer to actually kind of work with Richard because, God forbid if he ever got sick or, there are a lot of different reasons. He may want to take another position that what we're finding is people are afraid to step into a new position because of the lack of training, and they're afraid they'll fail. And it's when we tell you, don't worry, you're not going to fail. We're going to be with you every step of the way and answer all the questions. There's still a big hesitation. And the proof of that is we've got more volunteers. So we're looking for someone to do that. And then the other thing is we started an ad hoc committee. And we want to do we're considering doing a bylaw change where once a year, we have a budget review committee. And the people on the ad hoc committee are Tom Bowen, Tom Allen, and Jim Payton. So, that's where we're heading there. And we feel that, and Richard feels also, we need to have a comfort level with having the books reviewed at least once a year.
Just makes sense. It just makes sense.
It does make sense. So, we're trying to make it more, more efficient is one word, but we're trying to make it so that somebody wants to come in and be a part of the, the secretary, president, treasurer, God bless Bob Folk, he's the first vice president. He's really fighting a tough battle with cancer. So, and then the third thing that I wanted to set up is a couple of months ago, we made a decision to write a letter to the national SAR about, and I know the medals are American, but the clothes, all the clothing, there's a lot of stuff that are, aren't American made. And, I've gone through and did some research and there's a couple other members that's gone through the research and found that, there's a lot of American companies that make hats and shirts and et cetera. And we should keep the money in the United States. As simple as that. We're the sons of the American Revolution.
American Revolution.
There you go. And that's it. So,
China in there anywhere.
Nelson Peters is going to help author the letter, and we'd like to have a committee. And I was hoping that maybe one of our newer members who hasn't been inducted yet, and has a terrific singing voice, a mustache, and is sitting next to Nelson on the committee because.
Are you voluntolding me?
Well, yeah, you know, if the description fits, would you accept, please? Okay, we have another one. What I'm looking for is someone that is that lives up here in Citrus County, because when you get together, it's hard, you know, to drive an hour for a meeting. So if there's one more person who would like to do that. Would you like to do that, sir?
I can work on that.
Yeah, okay, so that's 3 people. We good?
Good.
Okay. And a newsletter, and what we need desperately is someone to do articles and you know, on our events. We have a lot of great events, okay, that we should be getting into the newspaper. We get this regional vice president, there's a lot of different things we can do for points for the chapter, and that is one of them. And right now there are 2 papers, the Chronicle and Hernando Sun, that we can submit articles to, and also Richard will post them on the website. So I hope someone will volunteer to do that. You really don't want me to write that thing. Okay.
Norm Pryor was a very hard act to follow.
Well, he was, you know what? But Norm he did it for a long time. He really did. And he's there, and he'll help a younger person come in and take, and I don't mean anything about the age because I'm not that far behind him, but the bottom line is, you know, if this chapter is going to survive, the younger people gotta stop, and I'm talking younger, God 60, right? You gotta step up to the plate and take over these positions and advance and go forward for this chapter to grow. You know, I mean, we've got a lot going for us. All right. Anything else? Does anybody have anything they want to bring up? Okay, I heard somebody talk, but I can't hear.
Happy dollars.
Okay. Now I gotta shut off my mic because it's happy dollars, Richard. I have a habit of talking.
Yeah.
He's doing happy doll.
All right. Happy for.
Just to be here.
I'm happy for the choir he's fixing to put together. So if you want to join the singing.
Here's for, this is for Thomas Jefferson, what a guy.
Happy for my 4th great grandson born yesterday.
Hey, congratulations.
Send y'all one. Army beating Missouri in the bowl game.
Yes, they will.
These are the Lord.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, guys, I wanted to let everybody know that David Hitchcock and his wife did all of the wrapping for all of the Christmas presents that got donated to the Veterans Home by themselves.
Just
So
2 days.
let's not let that happen again. And the other one is my grandson just graduated from Indiana University with a degree in business management. Happy for him.
Very good. Anything?
Even
Okay.
though I
I know, you prepaid.
Dave program.
Like to thank, thank my ancestor, John Manningham, for allowing me to be here.
Did it?
Yep.
I had to turn my mic back on.
Record so.
Yeah,
Yes, you're very much.
okay. How's that, Vicky? Now, okay? Okay, now, coming attractions. Our guest speaker next month will be Brian Burnett. And he's the gentleman that's been with us each February for the past 3 years, and he's written another new book. And I'll have the information, I'll post and send it out. And he's going to be in Minnesota, so we're going to do it via Zoom. And we did it last year and it came in, actually it came in rather well, but 11:15 Eastern Standard Time and 11:15 Minnesota time, it came in during lunch. So we got to record it and everything like that. But we got that issue straightened out. He's a wonderful speaker, and I hope that hope you all come. Okay, now we need the STAR recessional. And if we could all stand, please. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm going to read it, or I'm going to try. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligation to our forefathers who gave us the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, an independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free people. Class dismissed.
Wow. Thank you, Professor.
Great job,